Hello, all. This is Dr. Dave Maslach talking to you about reciprocity.com. The E is written with a 3. And in this particular video, I really want to talk to you all about what is anchoring and adjustment. What's the anchoring and adjustment heuristic that you might do? And absolutely everybody does this. I'm a professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship. And what I'm going to do is get into this basic decision-making sort of bias that we have, psychological bias that we have, and all people have this particular psychological bias, then get into some relevant examples that I think are really interesting. And then finally, talk about some ways that you can actually use this to sort of go forward and prosper as a manager, as a student, or whatever you're doing in this world. So this is part of my Nerd Out Wednesday series where I put things that I think are interesting in science and, just around that I think are pretty interesting I'd love to talk about. So what is the anchoring and adjustment heuristic? Well, it's just kind of like a common strategy that we have, and it's not a strategy that we sort of do consciously. Sometimes we do consciously, sometimes it's unconscious, but it's this basic story where we frame something. We have an idea in our mind of what something is. It's a cognitive map, for example, how something actually looks in our mind, what it should feel like, what it actually is. And then we frame the world around us, whatever it is, whatever you're looking at, and we frame the world around us relative to this idea that we have in our mind, right? So it seems a little bit abstract at this moment, but I'll get into it. And this is a really common sort of decision-making bias that we make. Danny Kahneman, Amos Tversky first pointed this out, and it's been a hit. It's been discussed a lot, and it sort of makes a lot of sense once you kind of understand what it is. So if you don't know, Amos Tversky, Danny Kahneman have won the Nobel Prize, really smart people, and then other people kind of leveraging these kind of ideas are making very large strides in these areas in terms of how we actually think, how we make decisions, and just having a large impact on all around the world in terms of how, so for example, CEOs, there's a large literature, again, I study this kind of stuff, large literature and sort of how CEOs do make these decisions, how companies make these decisions relative in this sort of way. How you can even look at like presidents of countries. I'm not aware of any study that's looked at that, but I'm sure there is. And that there's a lot of people sort of thinking about this stuff and making very large strides. It's really interesting stuff. So what is it that so to give you a more concrete example, so the example that they gave, it's actually kind of fun. What you can do is have yourself think of a particular large number, and the way that they got people to think of a large number is they had them sort of think of counting up from 1 to 8, multiplying 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 times 6 times 7 times 8. And then when you end with the 8, you sort of have to sort of sum up what that is and guess what that number is going to be, rather than starting with the 8, going 8 times 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. Those people are going to have to estimate that particular number, and most people are actually going to estimate, because they end at the larger number, they're going to, with the 8, when they end with the 8, they're going to estimate a larger number than the ones that end with the 1. They're going to actually estimate a smaller number. You can get people to sort of think in this way if you get them to think of a particular number, and you get them to think of a number that is large, and when they think of a large number and you ask them, you guess the number of countries that are in Africa compared to, so, think of 100 right now. And, if you think of 100, some of you are going to sort of think, well, I'm going to guess, 120, for example. But then if I said, think of, say, 20 people, or 20 countries in the continent of Africa, a lot of you are going to guess probably like 50 countries in Africa, right? So what they're getting at is, what ends up happening is, because we're framed in this way, we make decisions relative to those particular frames, or those particular sort of mental models that we have. And it's really been shown a fair bit, and it's pretty pretty strong sort of evidence at this point. As far as I know, I'm kind of a armchair theorist, an armchair person that's looking at the outside. But, at the same time, this is pretty concrete. So one sort of great example, if you're going to make a sort of a large purchase in the next little bit, a lot of you are going to feel free with making that large decision. Say it's $20,000. You're buying a car for $20,000. And you find out that you're going to have to pay an extra dollar more for some sort of taxation, for example. You're probably going to be okay with that. You're going to be like, whatever, right? Or even $100 more, you have to pay an extra tax. You're going to be like, whatever. But if you were, say, spending something that was worth, $1, and then you had to spend an extra $100 more for the same thing, you're going to really feel that, and you're going to really complain, and you're probably going to go to your congressman or senator or whatever and complain about this particular thing because there's so much of a difference in where you're framing from. It's still $100, so the difference is still $100. Compared to, there's still $100 is what you're having to pay, but, it's just depending on how you actually frame the particular problem, right? So that's really what it is. When I tell my students, when you go buy a car, a lot of you are going to, you're not going to be concerned about saving $1, but then when you go and get some gas, for example, which is what, I don't know, $30-$40 to put in a tank of gas in there, you're going to probably drive around the street to save $1 for the same thing. And that really gets your mind sort of wrapped around what's going on. And it's just framing, right? So it's still $1 no matter what situation you're in. And a lot of it is thinking of diminishing returns and sensitivity to the particular reference point that you have, right? So the reference point is large, and we're talking about a single number here, but it could apply to sort of more abstract concepts, and that's why I was kind of talking about mental models. But if your reference point is large in some sort of way, then you're going to frame your decisions relative to that and not be nearly as sensitive to it, which is kind of interesting. What are some other ones? This is what businesses can do. So if you're a manager, for example, and you're watching this is what you could do. And one store that does this very well is Kohl's. If you ever go to Kohl's, they will have the sticker price, the suggested retail price, and then they'll have a bazillion different discounts on there, which ends up being kind of the same regular amount anyways that you'd get in the store. At any other store, but they just framed it such that you feel like you're getting this great discount of like 75% off, right, from their price, but it's really what the regular price is. And, just that framing makes you feel that you're getting a great deal and you're more willing to make a purchase and you're more willing to spend. And, I do that all the time. I know about that kind of stuff and I still do those particular things. Another sort of example could be if you go to a restaurant, for example, and let's say what the sort of true quality is of the restaurant, that it's going to be a 4.0 out of 5 sort of scale. And you go there and this is sort of on average, you've gone there many, many, many times before. And you go there and then you experience a couple of sort of really good experiences where you get a 5.0 sort of experience. So you get like just perfect quality of food, perfect quality of service. Everything is wonderful. And then when you go back again and you get the 4.0 kind of style of service, you're going to feel really negative about that, even though the true where the quality is actually a 4.0 rather than the 5. And then the negative side, you can go, sometimes you'll receive a couple of times when you go to the restaurant where you feel you get bad service. And then when you go back and you get good service, you're like, hey, right on. You feel really good from that, right? So it's kind of weird, wonky things that happen with that. And this kind of works with, or the similar sort of bias that actually happens is a status quo bias, where we kind of adjust relative to our current circumstance. And this happens in Paul Samuelson talked about this, I believe, who was an MIT economist, doing some wonderful stuff. But basically, we sort of adjust relative to how we currently stand at this moment. We adjust relative to our reference point is how we currently stand at this moment, and then we adjust up or down relative to how we currently stand, right? So it might be, so for example, our when you go and you have some money that's saved up in the stock market, and the stock market falls, say it falls by $1,000, you're going to feel that disproportionately more than if it actually goes up by $1,000, even though it's the same thing. But we're just adjusting to, we're anchoring to our current sort of way we are right now, so our current sort of status quo, and then we're adjusting relative to that, and we're sort of feeling the pain or the pleasure relative to that, even though it's it's equally just $1,000 in any sort of way, but we sort of feel the pain a little bit more if it's $1,000 worse compared to $1,000 more. And I'm kind of getting the story a little bit mixed up with, and that's why I'm kind of getting a little bit hesitant here, but I'm kind of getting the story mixed up a little bit with gains and losses in this particular scenario. But basically, if there is any particular adjustment, so let's say you make a deal, and you think that your stock, so currently right now you think your stock is going to go, so it is at you're worth $1,000, and you think it's going to go up to $1,000, an extra $1,000, so $2,000. You're going to feel that you're going to be very, very excited from that $1,000 jump compared to if you think the stock is going to be at $25,000, and then it actually goes to the $2,000 limit. You're going to feel really bad about that, even though nothing's changed. It's just, just your framing of where it's going to be, right? So framing is really important to sort of understanding where you can actually, how you're actually going to feel. So what can you take from this in terms of, going forward with your own decisions and things like that? What I think you can actually take with this sort of understanding of anchoring and adjustment, the anchoring adjustment heuristic, is that you should set your goals pretty high because you're going to adjust relative to that particular goal, right? Set your reference point pretty high, and you're going to try to adjust relative to that reference point. The problem is, and this is the thing that you should be aware of, it's also very emotionally taxing, and it's really difficult because you're not actually going to achieve those goals very much because it's set so high. But you're going to try to adjust and make your decisions relative to whatever the goals are as high as you possibly can and achieve those particular things. You're going to set up your life to get to sort of adjust your life as much as you possibly can to get to those particular goals. But you're going to feel disproportionately unhappy or sad because of this sort of reference point that you have. So picking a reference point is really important, and determining what your reference point is or your anchor is really important because it's gonna allow you to make decisions along the way, right? So so coming back, what is anchoring an adjustment heuristic? Well, we have this sort of mental model of what the world should be in our mind, and we sort of adjust our decisions relative to what the world should be. So whether the stock market should go up or down, we sort of think in terms of that, whether and then if the actual performance sort of adjusts relative to that, then we're happy or sad. So the same thing with your own personal goals. If you set your own personal goals set very, very high, whatever it is, and then you adjust your sort of expectations and decisions relative to that particular thing, whether it's going to allow you to achieve it or not achieve it, and make it sort of feel a little bit more uncomfortable, I guess, relative to that particular reference point. So that's all I have to say. Hopefully you like this video. Thank you so much. Take care, and have a wonderful day. Bye.